I would like to remind everyone to please be sure all cell phones are turned to the off or vibrate position. Also, please be advised that our city council meetings are broadcast on Comcast Channel 99, AT&T UVerse, and the City of Gadsden YouTube. This meeting of the Gadsden City Council will come to order, and the chair calls on City Clerk Alva Nelson for the roll call.
Councilwoman Tolles.
Here.
Councilman Williams.
Here.
Worthy.
Here.
Back.
Here.
Wilson.
Here.
Cannon.
Here.
And Reed.
Here.
We have a quorum present and our meeting is open for business. I'm going to ask Heath Williamson to come and lead the invocation. Please stand and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the blessings that you freely give us, salvation most of all. Father, we thank you for your love, your grace, and your mercy. We pray that you just provide us with your wisdom, your guidance, your knowledge, and discernment, Father, to carry forward the business in front of us in accordance with your will. Father, may everything that we do be pleasing to you in all ways. We lay it at your feet and give you all the thanks and all the glory. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, I'll call on the EMA Director, Deborah Gaither, to provide us an update on COVID-19. I know you'll eventually get tired of coming up here talking to us.
No, we just want to make sure we keep the citizens and everybody updated. First, I would like to say that tomorrow, I want everybody to be weather aware. We do have the potential for a slight risk of severe storms between 2 p.m. and 10 p.m., so everybody be weather aware tomorrow. Then next, the dashboard for Alabama Department of Public Health has changed. If you haven't looked lately, this is a copy of today's. The dashboard is updated every day at 10 a.m. now. So you know that if you go there before, you're getting yesterday's numbers. So go after 10 a.m. every morning so you can see the updates. And what I'm handing out to you now was this morning before 10 a.m. And this is specific to Etowah County. So this is going to give you some of the answers that you'd been looking for, and I hope that that you'll visit the dashboard now and make sure that you have the link for that. It's a rather long link, so I don't have that memorized, but you can also get there through the Johns Hopkins University also. But this shows you that we're right now at a 4.35% fatality rate in Etowah County. Several had asked for that information, so now that's added on to it. It has our population, and all the statistics on that page are based on our population. So I think that's some good information for everyone, and Mike can answer some of your questions that that you have of the response and efforts through the COVID relief. I need to remind all the department heads and supervisors that if they have or want something to claim or want to claim something on their May claim for the FEMA grant, then they need to turn that in to Josh Tanner by June the 15th. Close of business. We'll be wrapping the month of May's claim up. There'll be a little difference in this one, but then we'll restart again in June with full ramp up on that. Tuesdays and Thursdays are still the testing days at the Etowah County Department of Public Health. To make an appointment, call the 256-547-6311 number and just ask to make an appointment. I think several people said last week they had problems getting through to that number and making an appointment, so I'm going to follow up on that, and I'm also going to pass the contact's phone number on to, it was Councilman Worthy, to you so that you can make that call yourself and see if there was an issue. Tomorrow, Riverview is doing a drive-through in their parking lot between 1 and 5 p.m. Riverview Hospital. You need to call and make an appointment. It makes it swifter, it makes it easier for things to go. Questions can be answered. You don't have to come sit in a line and then be, turned down. So make this call to this number. It's 256-442-5153, and that's to make an appointment for the drive-through testing clinic for COVID-19 at Riverview tomorrow between 1 and 5. I called you the other day and we missed each other. We were both busy, I think, whenever I tried to get in touch with you, Councilman Cannon. But June the 17th, there will be a drive-through testing at Dwight Baptist Church. The reason we chose not to do it at Elliott is they're still doing the senior feeding program. And so getting people in and out of the line that weren't necessarily there for testing, but were there for the feeding program between 11 and 1 would have been really hard. So we're going to move that over to Dwight Baptist.
What was the times again?
They have tentatively 8 a.m. until 11 a.m. So we're going to double check that. The pastor has agreed, Pastor Hagan has agreed to do that and provide refreshments for those that are working and a restroom for those that are working. So I think that's going to be a good place for us. Just be a big U-loop, and it'll make traffic flow a lot better. Gadsden PD is working on that right now to come up with a traffic plan. We're still filling department needs as they're requested. We're not open fully for countywide requests as of yet because we're still doing inventory on what we have to make sure that we have it placed correctly. So as there is an emergency need, we're filling those. We're still doing the weekly conference call for, that's countywide for elected officials and first responders. So if you haven't been joining us, please join us. We had a real good conference call last week with a presentation from Gadsden Regional Medical Center. And thank you for jump-starting that, Councilman Back. That was a very good idea, and we're expecting one from Riverview in the morning. So they're going to give us an update. Then we have changed just a little bit how we're doing our situation report. We're only going to do a situation report on Tuesdays now. That way, when we present it to you on Tuesday afternoon, you'll have time to review it before Wednesday morning. And if there's questions or additions, we can do that in the phone call on Wednesday morning. So we felt like this might flow a little bit better to do that. I think that's all I have to report today. Do you have any questions?
Deborah, I have a question.
Yes.
First of all, thank you for everything y'all have done, but on the dashboard, where it lists the number of staffed hospital beds and licensed beds and ICU beds, are those beds that are currently available or total capacity, or ones that are occupied by COVID,
Those are our total capacity.
That's total capacity?
Right.
Okay.
It's not, they're not occupied, but that's total capacity.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Any other questions from the council? Once again, we thank you very much for coming and giving us an update
Thank you.
on what's happening in our city. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the work session and the council meeting that was held June the 2nd.
So moved.
Second.
Clerk, will you take the vote?
Those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries to approve minutes.
The chair will entertain a motion to ratify payments of accounts for the week of May 29th through the June the 4th.
So moved. Second.
Clerk, will you take the vote?
Those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries to ratify payment of the accounts.
Any proclamations? Unfinished business, we have none today. A resolution that's authorizing the application and acceptance of the Assistance to Firefighters Safer Grant. The city is applying for a grant for hiring 15 additional firemen for a 3-year period. and the amount is $2,149,753.95, with no match required. The chair will entertain a motion to adopt this resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Clerk, will you take the vote?
Those in favor to adopt the resolution, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries to adopt.
Our next resolution is appointing a member to the Greater Etowah 310 Board. This appoints Danny Jackson for a term ending April the 1st, 2026. The chair will entertain a motion to adopt this resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Clerk, will you take the vote?
Those in favor to adopt the resolution, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries to adopt.
Is there any new business? I didn't ask, but I'm going to ask for a committee report. Craig Scott, if you'll come and just encourage and talk about the census, because you're part of the census. So if you just give us kind of an update about the census. And also someone asked me, but when is the closing? Also, if you know what the closing date for the census is.
Let me answer that last question first.
Okay.
Right now, there's not a closing date, and we're hopeful that it'll be moved by the federal government. It is due on President Trump's desk at the end of the year, but I think there's a good chance that will move. The Census Department will start their own campaigns, phone campaigns, and door knocking around the neighborhoods of non-responders beginning in early September. So keep that in mind, too. I'm passionate about the census. We need to get everybody counted in the city of Gadsden and in Etowah County as well. It means more money for us, and especially to the folks in some lower responding areas that need the services. So we need those folks counted, and some good efforts are going on. Councilman Back and I have kind of taken this honor and passionate about it. There is an opportunity to do some geofencing where we could send out some specific targeted advertising to phones, smartphones, and just about everybody has a smartphone now. But we can target certain neighborhoods, certain businesses. We've got an estimate from a marketing company to do that, and the estimate to do all census districts in the city is $27,000 for 2 months. That's a lot of money. There is an option for a lower price, but I may bring this back to the council after some more discussions with the company for you to consider. It's a lot of money, but spread that out over 10 years, and the more folks we get counted, the more people we make aware, the less the cost really will be to bring in millions more to us. So, President Tolles?
All right, thank you, and I appreciate it, and anytime you're here, I'll ask you about the update. But it's very important because on this sheet, I've got just one person for a year is $1,600. So you just think if 20 people times $1,600, but for a year. So that's money that if we are not counted, we will lose.
Just one person,
Just one.
$1,600 for next year times 10.
Right,
It's a lot of money.
like $160 million if it's 10,000 people times that. So that's a lot of money we could have.
Very good. Thank you.
All right, thank you. At this time, we have a citizen request.
I was gonna see if he could give you an update on the library.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I saw that in the, paper. Oh, okay, good.
I'm passionate about the library, too. And very good news. The library is going to reopen next Monday, the main library. 2 weeks later, on June 29th, we'll open the 2 branches, Alabama City and East Gadsden. But next week on June 15th, the main library. Now, with that said, we'll have limited services and limited access. I want to keep everybody safe. That's the public coming in and, of course, ourselves. So the front section of the library, our front desk, if you will, and the popular reading area right there in front will be open and available. There'll be no loitering. We want to make sure that folks are safe. We're recommending masks and gloves be used. That'll be up to the folks coming in. And if they need a book from the stacks, we'll be glad to go and retrieve it for them. We're asking that all materials still be returned to the library at our outside book drops. We have quite a good process, cleaning process going on. In fact, we isolate books for 7 days after the return. So anyway, we'll ask for that. But we're excited to get people back in the library.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we have a citizen request from Savannah Miles, representing Black Lives Matter. If you'll, I know I call your name, but if you'll state your name.
Yes, thank y'all. My name is Savannah Miles.
And I'm Shambrika Dozier.
So clearly, I'm not here as Adrienne Reed. Like I said, my name is Savannah Miles, and I am here as a deeply concerned citizen and fifth-generation Gadsden resident who's been fortunate enough to support the Black Lives Matter Gadsden leadership group. On behalf of this group of local organizers and leaders, I would like to open with our appreciation to you all. Thank you to those councilmen and women who have already shown your support by coming to protests, calling to check in on our leaders, and listening to the stories of racial injustice in our community. I know I'm not qualified to speak for the entire Black Lives Matter Gadsden movement, much less the Black community in Gadsden. What I am qualified to speak to is the hope for change this movement has given me as a young person in my hometown. Let me be honest. Growing up, I could not wait to get out of Gadsden. I wanted to run from the pain of having teachers, peers, and family members tell me that my Black friends would ruin my reputation. I wanted to run from the reality that they were right, that King's dream, that down in Alabama, one day little Black boys and Black girls would be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls, is still not reality. I wanted to run away from the shame I felt from being too afraid to speak up and fight back. And run I did. I got a scholarship to attend college out of state, and I got out of Gadsden. Ironically, it was once I was away that I realized why I had to get back. I missed the mountain ridges and swimming holes. I missed the slow roll of the Coosa and the peaceful pace of life. And I missed the openness, warmth, and generosity of our community. And what I learned up north was that not only do outsiders not recognize our beauty, it's that all they see is ugliness. That taught me that no person or party is coming back to save our community, that we're gonna have to make that change for ourselves. That's what brought me back. And it's not easy being home, especially when so many loved ones have left. My sister also attended Harvard and has told me time and time again how she would like to move home and make change, but she won't, because she's too fearful of what could happen to her Black immigrant husband if they came back. How many of us, and specifically I mean us white people, have looked white supremacy in the face and turned away? I'm not even talking about going head to head with white supremacists. Maybe we've let family members and friends use racial slurs. Maybe we've called Black people too angry or aggressive for calling out racism in our education or incarceration systems. Maybe we have claimed that all lives matter without acknowledging that Black lives still don't. No matter how you might have felt or how you might have acted in the past, we now have an opportunity to put our community on the path to progress, trust, and justice. We have an opportunity to make our community tangibly safer right here, right now. We have an opportunity to face our fears and not repeat the same mistakes that stain our community's history. Y'all saw how many young people showed up to the protests. Y'all have an opportunity to show us that we don't have to leave Gadsden to live a good life. I moved back a year and a half ago with the sole purpose of supporting a movement for racial and economic justice here in my hometown. It's been hard, but the heart and hard work I've seen over the past 2 weeks has made me proud to be from my hometown. Unfortunately, y'all, many of the young leaders and organizers in Black Lives Matter Gadsden are not yet ready to say that. Honorable councilmen and women, you have the power to change that. Please don't run away from our problems. Give us a reason to stay here and face them head on. Thank you again for the support that many of you have already vocalized. I hope and pray you continue to open your hearts and not only hear our community's calls to action, but to act on them. Thank you.
Would y'all like to get a copy of our demands? Have y'all already received them?
I'd like to say.
Thank you so much.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Savannah.
We now have comments by the council and mayor. Start with you, Mayor.
I just want to congratulate the protesters, and the sheriff's office, the city police, and citizens during the march. I thought it was pretty good, orderly, didn't have any kind of problems that I know of. I'm just glad everybody showed their class, what we need to do. Can you not hear me? Is that better?
Yeah, that's better.
I'm sorry. I'm not technically oriented too much. I'm just glad that the police, the sheriff's office, the protesters, everybody did a good job making everything orderly. We didn't have any kind of bad issues, and I'm just proud of all of them for both sides for the way that they demonstrated that they were here in a peaceful manner. Thank you.
Councilman Williams.
Thank you, Madam President. So I likewise want to echo the mayor's sentiment. I'm just bubbling over with pride for the young people that demonstrated on Sunday. That's 2 Sundays in a row that they've demonstrated, done so peacefully and orderly, with structure. A very deliberate communication was sent out ahead of time, reminding members and those who plan to participate that there were laws that had to be adhered to and rules that had to be followed. And those protesters, for the most part, followed those rules. And they are to be commended for that. We should be proud of our young people for demonstrating peacefully and exercising their First Amendment right. Along with that, I don't think you can have that same conversation without speaking to the great job that our local officers did in exercising restraint and being professional. We have a police chief that works very hard, but he likes to do that work kind of under the radar. And he's not a publicity hound by any stretch. So please don't mistake his lack of visibility in some regard for him not being active, because he was very active in making sure and ensuring the safety of everybody there. And so do want to commend him there. We will, as a council, and I'm not going to pretend to speak on behalf of this entire body, but you can rest assured, we've already been having conversations about things relative to reforms and changes that can be made. And so these reforms and suggestions are not being presented in vain, and people need to understand that. You know, now whether, you know, I'm not certain as to how we'll be able to align with deadlines that have been set, but I can assure you that the mayor, this council, and the police chief, we're all considering a number of the things, and for a while, we've been considering a number of the things that have been asked of us. There's a serious problem across this country as it relates to police behavior and reform. But one of the things I want to point out that was very clear when I had a conversation offline with the chief, he was very clear. He said to me, and I apologize to you, Chief, if I'm out of turn, but he was very clear. He said,
And you called his name.
He said to me very clearly that the things that we saw on that videotape were not in line at all with what our officers were taught to do.
That's right.
They were not in line at all with what our officers are taught to do. And so again, that individual made an individual choice that doesn't and shouldn't reflect on a number of the good officers who suit up every day to go out and do things the right way. Doesn't remove us for the responsibility to have to hear these protests and to have to adhere and consider what's being asked of us. But again, I think we have a responsibility to be even-handed within that discussion. Now, I think for me, one of the most important things, and I don't want to take away from these young people and their movement, because what they're asking for, what they're pushing for is very relevant, very meaningful. But in the South in particular, we have the issue of these Civil War monuments. And let me throw a few facts at you. Some of this stuff, a lot of it, we know, all right? We were taught. Even those of us who had to receive textbooks with pages torn out of them, hand-me-down textbooks, we know what the truth is. The truth is that the South, the Confederacy in particular, seceded from the greatest nation in the history of the world. They deliberately and directly chose to walk away from the United States of America in support of a belief that it was okay to use free labor, free slave labor, to build wealth. That's a fact. That's not Derrick's opinion. That's a fact. They fired the first shots to instigate that conflict. They rendered this nation at its weakest moment in history. We were open at that point, leaving us open for foreign invasion and insurrection from within, pitting brother against brother, blindly leading poor whites to war to fight for slaves that they didn't own. And then they proceeded to lose. They proceeded to lose the war. And were it not for a great deal of political restraint and just the good-naturedness of the United States of America and what we stand for, Robert E. Lee and Jefferson Davis would have been tried for treason or put before a military tribunal and hung. That's what would have happened. The statues that we have to drive by, look at, hold our nose, and bear are statues that were erected in remembrance of the poorest and weakest moment in this great nation's history. It's also there in remembrance as a symbol to those of us who look like me that somehow I'm more supreme to you. I've lived in this world almost 50 years, and I can tell you, I have never seen white supremacy, never witnessed it. Because in order for me to acknowledge white supremacy, I have to acknowledge somehow that as a black person, I'm lesser than my white counterparts. And if you know me, and most of you in this room do, you know that I don't have a racist bone in my body. I can tell you that I've probably got as many white friends that I can call on and count on and depend on as I do black friends. So for me, I'm not saying this from a racist lens, and I'm looking at this through a racist lens. I'm looking at it for what it is. Those Civil War symbols represent something negative for this nation, and they also represent something negative for black people. Think about what a swastika means for a Jewish American citizen. That battle flag means the same thing for me. Those statues mean the same thing for me. The fact that we have to fund and vote on and consider things that fund a cemetery named after General Nathan Bedford Forrest, who, by most accounts, formed the modern-day Ku Klux Klan. What I'm asking, and we wonder, honestly, we wonder why when comedians mimic stupidity, they do it in a Southern accent. It's because of that kind of belief. And so what I ask this council to do, and what I ask our president to do, is please convene the Public Safety Committee and have the council to consider the removing and relocating of the two Emma Sansom statues as a safety concern to this city. Because if you notice on Sunday, there was only one incident that was even remotely violent. And that one incident involved the pro-Confederate monument people across the street. That's the kind of hate and ignorance and evil that those statues invoke. They don't invoke anything positive. And I want to be fair. I had a conversation 2 years ago with one of the members of the Sons of Confederate Soldiers. And that individual was just as disgusted as I was that their symbols are being used by hate groups. They are just as disgusted as us. The vast majority of the people in this great nation are disgusted when those symbols are used by hate groups. And so this is a great opportunity for the city to step up and at the very least have a dialogue about what to do with those symbols that none of us had anything to do with. I'm also asking that the committee take a look at the renaming of the Forest Cemetery and whether or not it is possible for us to continue to fund the cemetery, but rename it to something more specific and meaningful for all of the citizens of Gadsden. And I want to thank my colleagues for their consideration of that, and I look forward to having future discussions as it relates to that. Thank you.
Councilman Worthy?
I just want to say thank you to all the young people, not only the leadership group of Black Lives Matter that marched. I've been involved in 2 marches with them, marching. But I have a lot of people now calling and want me to tell them to do this. And I just talked to a couple of them out there, and I told them I would not tell them to do anything because they started this movement. They're working very hard, and they know exactly what they're doing. And we could help them if they want us to, but we're not going to try to take over or try to tell them what to do. But and I want to commend the police department for the job they did on Sunday. but we let a couple of the counter protesters come over into our group. And that's the only thing I didn't like. And I had some heated words with them. It was a female and a male. And then at the very end, we had another male that make it over to our group, and the police came over and handled it very well, so I want to commend them. But my question to the counter-protesters are, how can you counter-protest what happened to George Floyd? We all seen it. We all seen the video. And like I was talking to some of the police officers out there, and they said, well, they don't have a heart. They're evil. The counter-protest what these peaceful protesters was doing. And they were trying to start something. So and we had plenty of officers there from all over. And they're not just Gadsden and county, we had state troopers there. We had attack teams there. So I appreciate them for protecting us. But for this to be Gadsden, it's sad that we even had to have all those officers out there on a peaceful protest just because you got these counter-protesters. And I don't know if they ginned up all this stuff on Facebook about us tearing down the monument. And I want to commend Jerome Gunn because a couple people did, they got very upset at the counter-protesters. And he did an excellent job along with Councilman Wilson over there, Reverend Earl Dudley, Keith Dudley, and myself that de-escalate those two situations. But we as a city, as a people, as a country, we must do better. We have to do better. It's 2020. We shouldn't even still be talking about racism. It's 2020, people. And we can talk all we want, but you have to change your own heart. We can't change it for you.
No, God has to.
Thank you.
Councilman Cannon.
Yes, thank you. I'd just like to say God created us all equal, red, yellow, black, or white. We're all precious in this sight. I went to Emma Sansom High School. My kids went to Emma Sansom High School. My father went there. I don't know how many people has gone to Emma Sansom High School. I think it would be a shame to this city to take down this monument out here of a girl, and a farm girl that just that had nothing to do, did nothing wrong, in my opinion. I just can't understand. I don't understand what the statue has to do with George Floyd. I mean, I just can't understand it. Not only this statue, but all the ones around in Birmingham and Hoover. I don't know why the people want to destroy all this stuff. It's history. I'm not for taking the statue down. I think that it's been up there since 1906, the best I can remember. A group of ladies got together and put it there. We've had people run into it with cars coming over the bridge at 60 miles an hour and lost their life and never chipped that. I just don't, and I'm not for renaming Forest Cemetery. My mother and daddy and my grandmother's buried over there. I've got some aunts and uncles over there. I'm not for renaming that. You got to let history stay where it is. We've got to be unified. We all just got to live together. God created us all equal. We need to understand that. And we need to be worried about these people's lost souls as much as people's worried about marching and stuff like that. There's all kind of people out here that's lost, that don't know our Lord Jesus Christ. We need to get behind that and try to win some of these souls. We could be a whole lot better city, county, state, and nation if we would do that. That's all I got to say.
I meant to, Councilman Back.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam President. First of all, I want to thank the Black Lives Matter Gadsden for coming here today. Savannah, thank you for your words and your heart. And thank you also for being a part of the organizing and how well the last two marches have gone. And I think it's important that you guys are out there. I also think it's important of what your message is. I also want to echo Councilman Williams with our police department. I think they did an excellent job. It could have been a volatile situation, and I think that they conducted themselves appropriately. It's also nice to see our sheriff department and our police department work together. I know Chief Jaggers and Sheriff Horton were in constant contact. It just shows that although we have 11 municipalities in our county, that we do work together for the common good of all of our citizens. You know, I'm 61 years old. When I went to Disque Junior High School, it was integration. There was no handbook. There was no directive of how to do this. Okay, I look back there and I see one of my friends from that time that's here today, Larry Suttles. Larry and I have been friends since about 1973, 1974. I played on the basketball team at Disque and Gadsden High, and so I have a lot of black friends to this day. And but again, there was no handbook on how to do it. My mother and father told me to treat people the way that I wanted them to treat me. And to the best of my ability, that's what I've done, and that's how I've tried to be in my 61 years. I hear from time to time that I'm not tough enough, that I'm not tough enough to be on the council, and I'm not tough enough to handle hard decisions. I kind of bristle at that. Just because I treat people the way I want to be treated seems to bother people that I'm not tough enough. That's such a weak argument. I tend to treat people the way I want to be treated, and so I'm not going to change. I am who I am. I have friends from those days in the mid-'70s all the way to 2020 that can vouch for that. Savannah, you're in your mid-20s or late 20s. You know, it's you're just now starting your life. All of us that are older have lived through this. I mean, we have been through that. It's I didn't have any black children in much until I got to Disque that I went to school with. There was about 3 or 4 at Ura Brown Elementary where I attended elementary school. But somehow we got through it. And do we have better days ahead and a ways to go? Yes, we do. And I think your list can help us do that. I also think that this has been going on for a long time, and it's not fixed. It's like Councilman Worthy said, it's 2020, y'all. My personal belief is that it's a heart issue, and no amount of demands or suggestions are going to change anybody's heart. If so, they would have already been changed, and we would already be getting along better. So, you know, my prayer for the last few weeks has just been that God would change all of our hearts, starting with my heart. Starting with Kent Back's heart, I want to have a better heart. And I'm praying that God's going to change all of our hearts. This is a heart issue, pure and simple. It's just a heart issue. To put your knee on another human being's neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds is a heart issue. I can't be persuaded otherwise. We have to pray for one another. We have to pray for one another's hearts. I've gleaned this in the newspaper, your list. I think you're going to be pleased to find that I believe some of the things that you're wanting are already in place in regards to the police department. I'm not going to speak for the chief, but I'm seeing some things, and from prior conversations, I think you're going to be pleased with what you are going to hear. You know, I'm not prepared today to go into deep discussion on what's been discussed so far. I'd like to pray about it. I'd like to read about it, and I'd like to study about it, especially with your list. Savannah from Black Lives Matter, you know, it's been going on for hundreds of years, and to have a 72-hour window, you know, it's going to take a little bit longer than that, so I'm sure you guys understand that. I think we do owe you a response or a promise of a meeting. I feel certain that you'll get that. I'm one council person of 7. We're the legislative body of the city of Gadsden. We're not the administrative body. That resides in the mayor's office. And so that I'm sure there'll be subsequent meetings, and your voices will be heard, and there'll be deep discussion and deep dialogue in regards to what you've presented. I really do appreciate how you've gone about this. It's very professional. I think it's very intuitive, and you know, just we all need to not find ourselves making emotional decisions. Those aren't good decisions because they tend to wither when the heat comes or when the rains come. We need to make solid, thought about, slept on decisions going forward in regards to Councilman Williams' request, in regards to your request. So I urge everybody to do that. Take a deep breath, think about this, pray about it, if that's what you choose to do. I'm not saying everybody's gonna pray. But if that's what you choose to do, pray about it. And we need to approach this in a way that's gonna be a lasting answer and that we don't have to keep coming back and keep coming back. So, again, I want to thank everybody for the march. I want to thank fellow council members that showed up. You know, I chose not to attend because I didn't think that was the right setting for me. That's what I told Shunbrika in a text message. It's hot. I don't think I can walk that far. I just didn't think that was the right place for me to be. I have community meetings. Quite frankly, they're not very well attended. I could probably say in the 19 months I've been on the council, there's been less than 40 people attend 3 rounds of meetings. So I'm still going to continue to have those meetings, and I still encourage people to come. That's the setting where we can really get a lot of stuff done. That's when the city engineer's present, the police are present, building and inspections, Brian Harbison's present, and you can get some real answers. So it wasn't that I disrespected what you guys were doing. I just didn't feel like it was my place. I just didn't. I mean, I support the march, and I'm glad that you guys are doing what you're doing. So don't take my absence as a lack of care or a snub, because it was not intended to be that way. Thank you, Madam President.
Councilman Wilson.
I'll start with a quote from the great Maya Angelou that said, "Do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better." I don't hold any ill will towards the members of our community who served in the Civil War or were a part of the Civil War. It was a different time in history, and I understand they were doing what they thought was right. But having said that, we know better now, and it's time to do better. I attended the march first and foremost to support the young people of this community, because I think they have a right to be heard. I think that their cause was just. They were protesting the brutal murder of an African-American person, and I think that was the right time. And in fact, the only reason I decided to go, I'd initially decided that I wasn't going to march, but when I saw the number of counter-protesters posting on social media, threatening violence and misconstruing the message of these young people to try to incite violence, I thought that it would be important for me to be there to try to provide some level of peace to the situation. And having said that, I want to, again, I've done this on social media, but I want to directly apologize to the Gadsden Police Department in general, and specifically Captain Keener. At one point, when those individuals did make their way into the crowd attempting to incite violence, I got really upset that they were allowed through the barricade, and Captain Keener was quick to jerk me up by the belt loop and let me know exactly what happened and how it happened. So I apologize if I lost my composure there for a brief second. That was the first march I'd ever been involved in, and the emotions were high, and that's what made me know that I was in the right place, because every person out there that was a part of this march, emotions were high. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate the police department for the training that they go through and how to handle these situations. Because I'm telling you right now, I'm enough of a man to admit that the way I reacted in that split-second decision would have made the situation worse had those police not been there. I would have made the situation worse. So thank you again, specifically to Captain Keener and several other members that were there to work through that process with me. As far as the monument itself goes, I understand this is obviously a very touchy subject, but for me, I think there's a way that we can honor the history of of people's ancestors in this community without creating pain and suffering for other members of this community. And that's exactly what that monument does in its current place. So one of the great things I love about this city council is the diversity, not only in the color of our skin, but in our opinions on how to handle things. And I think that we're very fortunate as a community to have that diversity here. So I'll kind of smash up a little bit of everybody's idea with my idea. I think we should relocate the monument to Forest Cemetery, where there are Civil War burial sites, and understand that there are family members that means a great deal to, and that's very sacred too. So I think that the Emma Sansom monuments should be relocated to the Forest Cemetery, and I do think that the cemetery should be renamed. Again, Mr. Forrest was widely known as the founder of the Ku Klux Klan in America. He was the president of the organization, and that man is being honored right outside of this city hall. And what I would propose is that we erect a new statue in front of City Hall that doesn't look backwards but looks forward into tomorrow. And I think it's a way that we could all move forward. And maybe we do rename the Forest Cemetery the Civil War Memorial Cemetery, if that's the case. And I think we should go one step further and rename Forest Avenue as well. I would propose a prominent African-American figure to be considered for that, potentially Miss La Gray, who made a tremendous impact on this community during her time here. And I think it'd be a great gesture by the city of Gadsden to our population, which is very diverse, that says we're looking forward and we're not looking backwards anymore. We understand and we recognize that those monuments recognize or represent something to some people that's not necessarily violent, but it doesn't have a place, in my opinion, in the middle of our community. I don't think it sends the right message to potential employers. I don't think it sends the right message to the community at large. And again, to Councilman Williams' point, I walked every inch of that march with these young people, and there was never once a threat of violence, never once. The only time that anything threatened violence was within 100 feet of that statue, when those counter-protesters rushed out into the street as the march arrived. And again, had it not been for these law enforcement officers who were there, who kept their composure and stayed cool and calm under pressure, there is no doubt in my mind that this would have been one of the more violent situations that we've seen in America around this concept. So I think it's clear, in my opinion, that there is a level of divisiveness around that statue to the point to where we can find a compromise and a path forward where that statue is not destroyed but relocated, and it will open up the avenue for us to move forward as a community. And I want to tell y'all how proud I was standing there watching those young kids peacefully state their message, and how proud I am of so many people in this community who were there to listen. Not to talk, not to tell them what they did wrong, to Councilman Worthy's point. Not to talk, not to tell them what they ought to do, not to tell them how to handle it or what they really ought to care about, but just to listen to what they're saying. And I'm telling you right now that if anybody actually opens their ears and listens, there's no way you can deny it. That statue was erected in 1906. You know what else happened in 1906 in Gadsden? Mr. Bunk Richardson, who was accused by a mob of murdering and raping a young girl, I believe, was drugged from the Gadsden prison right up here at the top of the hill and taken down Locust Street and hung from the railroad trestles a block from where that statue was erected in 1906. Now keep in mind, 1906, that's a full 65 years after the Civil War had ended. And that statue got erected after that terrible incident in our community happened. So I think if you've got to understand what kind of pain and heartache that causes members of this community to have that statue there, knowing the backstory of when it was erected. That statue wasn't erected the year after the Civil War was over. It wasn't erected 10 years after the Civil War was over. It was erected almost 70 years later, on the same year that one of the worst civil rights atrocities in the history of Alabama happened right here, less than 200 yards from this building. So we've got to do something as a community, and it is going to take time. It's not something that's going to happen fast. Realistically, I think this plan will probably take 2-3 years to execute and figure out how we're going to fund it. I know in other communities we've seen GoFundMe campaigns where the funds are raised to pay for the relocation of the statues or any expenses the city might incur. So I think all those are a great idea, and I think the most important thing is for us to just keep an open mind and continue to talk to one another. And to Councilman Cannon's point, we were all made equal in God's eyes, and he loves all of us equally. And if we can just grab a hold of that for one last second, I think we can move forward as a community and be stronger because of all this. Thank you.
Councilman Wilson, I just have one question to ask you. Forest Avenue is not the only street around here. We've got Lincoln, Stonewall, all these. You want to rename all those streets too in Walnut Park like that?
I don't necessarily. I think that someone who was the founder and president of the Ku Klux Klan goes to the top of my list first, and then we'll work backwards from there.
But you want to rename those also?
I think you look at it on a case-by-case basis. If the names of a street relate to someone who was responsible for the hate and killing of innocent people, yes, I think it's a bad idea for us to name a street like that. Now, I'm not prepared or educated enough to sit here and argue the merits of every single street name in Gadsden, but I can tell you I do know that General Forrest is someone who represents a lot of hurt for a lot of people in this country, and I think it would be a great gesture by this community if we were to find a way to rename that particular street to somebody that has done more to bring this community together rather than divide it.
Councilman Reed.
Am I up? Well, in the first place, I didn't come here today to preach. I came here today to listen. And I think after much talk and discussion that we'll come to some future decision that will benefit all of us. I was really happy to see a peaceful demonstration. I was impressed by our police department and their professionalism. I was also impressed by our county sheriff, Mr. Horton, and the way he handled his people. So as to all this other stuff that we're talking about and preaching about, and praying about, we'll just come together and we'll figure out what's the right thing to do. Now, I'm not for going out of here and knocking down a statue. You can forget that. General Forrest, I don't think that thing's named after Forrest. It may be. But I believe you'll find it's left out one R. I don't know for sure. But I think we're talking about stuff that can perpetuate us into another problem. We ought to settle this thing down and get it done between all factions, instead of always thinking down the future, okay, we settle this, now we're going to do this. We settle that, now we're going to do this. If we do that, we're going to be in constant turmoil forever. And that ain't preaching, that's just me saying. But we will discuss it. And if you want it in Public Safety Committee, that's where it'll go. Thank you.
I would just like to say that I don't want us to lose the energy that was done the past 2 weeks. What I'd like to say is the energy needs to continue. And we don't need to lose focus for or against. We need to make some changes. And one of the changes, we need to go from injustice to righteousness to justice. You may disagree with me, but that doesn't have anything to do with the statues. We need to learn to communicate with each other better. And I think that that's what the group needs to do. is to come and to communicate. Don't say that we won't do anything and you have not communicated with us as a group. You've got to continue. There's one of the things I'd like to suggest, there's leadership with the young people, there's workforce development with the young people, and there's community. There's 4 levels: individual, the family, the church, and the community. And all of that has to work together. There has to be some action. I heard somebody say, if we do all of this talking and there's no action, then all we've done is a speech. So all of us 7 up here can talk, speech, but if we don't have any action, I'm for communicating. I'm for the young people getting involved, helping to train them to become leaders, helping them to become elected officials, helping them to become police officers. Right now, we need 8 firemen. You know, people say that there's not some things out here, but there's 8 firemen. If we get this grant, there's 15 more firemen that could be hired. So we're talking about educating our young people and being involved in the community. But it goes back to what I said many council meetings ago. Only God can change the hearts of men and women. And that is the only difference that's going to make. God is not a God of confusion. And I agree with you. I didn't come here to preach today, but I just want the young people to communicate with the leaders. Don't say what they won't do. Don't say that because they didn't. I marched in the 60s. I was a part of that movement, and we were nonviolent, and things have moved from one point to another, but we need to go even further. But you can't legislate people and hatred. You can't legislate it. You can't change people. That has to come from the individual person. So I'm saying to the young people who march to get involved. Right now, we need census over in East Gadsden where people need to do the census. That's money. You know, if you want to be an elected official, you know, I hear so much, and at first it used to bother me that we're not doing nothing, and there's a lot going on in this city. Get involved. Find out what it takes to be an elected official. Some people don't know that this is a Dillon state. We get our powers from the legislature. The other thing is there's a civil service board. We cannot tell the police officer, we cannot, discipline them. So those are the things that you need to be educated on before people make statements about things that they don't know what they're talking about. They just jump up and say what we can and we can't do. And so I just suggest to you to communicate. Come and ask. I had conversations with people. I talk to my constituents all the time. I said this to my daughter the other day, and then I closed. I was brought up, and but my father told me to respect police officers, and I do that today. Yes, there's some that make bad decisions, but it's a lot of council people that make bad decisions. There's a lot of mayors that make bad decisions. There's a lot of preachers, teachers, everywhere make bad decisions. So we can't put them all in the same pot. But we just need to communicate and work with each other, work together, talk to us. You know, you all like Facebook, and that's the king down on the end, but I don't care anything about it. So come and talk to me. I'll talk to you face to face or whatever, but I appreciate what you all have done. I definitely appreciate the police department. They don't tell everything that's happening. And I'm going to say this, and maybe I shouldn't, but on Friday, somebody bought 300 cans of black paint. What was the purpose of that? So that's something to think about, you know. I just want to throw that out to let you all know we have got to work together. And we've got to do it peacefully, and you get more done like that. I call for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.